coming up on Chopper's Political Podcast.
You were Home Secretary when immigration hit record levels. Do you want to apologise for that? Welcome back to Chopper's Political Podcast, where I bring you the best guests, gossip and stories from the heart of our studio here in Westminster. My guest this week is the former Home Secretary, Dame Priti Patel, the second of 6 Conservative MPs standing to replace Rishi Sunak, who we'll be talking to on this podcast in the next few weeks. Dame Priti is well known to GB News viewers as a senior politician from the right wing of the party, who, since she quit as Home Secretary, has been quietly rebuilding her support base. Now she's standing to be Tory leader. Dame Priti Patel, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. Why do you think you can be the leader?
For a number of reasons, Chopper. This is a pivotal time in our party, no question about that. But because post this awful election defeat and result, where we lost 251 colleagues, and clearly we're a small party now, we have to unite, we have to rebuild, and we have to look to the future. And to do that, I think we need a strong leader with conviction, but also someone with strength and experience. I have plenty of experience in government and out of government, also with the party. I literally am from the party for the party.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute, yeah.
And you know, there are a range of reasons. I think right now we do need to unite. We have to earn trust back from the British public after what has happened to us. And I feel that I am the candidate that can do that.
And trust is to what you did as well, you know, immigration being record levels when the Tories were in charge. But let's come to that in a minute.
Sure.
How many MPs are backing you?
So
more than 10?
Oh, I have a raft of colleagues from all aspects of the party, and that really speaks to the point about unity and reaching out.
Can you
and
name anybody from left and right?
Well, I've got colleagues. I have got a raft of colleagues.
Secret list.
Well, importantly, you know, people, you can go and look out and see who's supporting me. You can go and do that. Your team can do that. I have colleagues from across the parliamentary party and also former colleagues as well, because let's not forget, as much as this is a vote for MPs, it's actually a party vote in that sense. This is about how we rebuild and reunite our party. And so from all areas, from our members to former colleagues to current colleagues, you know, I've got that support.
Your slogan is Unite to Win. You're a well-known right-winger. I would argue your party, in the parliamentary party, is now pretty centrist, maybe even more left of centre. How can you be the right leader for that party?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got 121 MPs. We're a very different parliamentary party in terms of size, completely. Labels are irrelevant now, they really are. And let's be very honest, the public out there who are currently going to work and working hard to give their families economic security and good futures for their families, they're not interested in labels in politics anymore. They really aren't. And that's why unity is crucial to my campaign and also who I am. And with that, the experience that I can bring. We've also got a lot of new MPs in our party. And with new MPs in particular, they need to know that there are experienced professional people in the team that can actually work to make us, you know, attractive, engaging, compelling all over again.
I mean, 2/3 of voters don't seem to care who the next leader is. 1/3 of Tory voters last month, apparently, according to Ipsos Mori, don't care who the leader is. So perhaps that's left and right doesn't really matter in the Tory party anymore.
I think just on those figures, that's more for a reflection of how disillusioned the public have been with us. I mean, you know, we've got to draw a line in the sand as to what has happened. No question about that. But the reality is that the public stopped listening to us. They stopped looking at us before they even stopped listening to us. That speaks to the journey that we have now as a party, how to regain the trust and confidence of the British public, how we can effectively show that we're professional all over again. You know, we've gone through this phase of squabbling, self-inflicted, all the self-harm that's taken place. We do have to put a line in the sand now and move forward.
And you have a plan for your first 100 days as leader, do you? What is that plan?
So, first of all, it is our party. We have to become match fit all over again.
Yeah.
We do have to look at, you know, the areas where our party has not sort of excelled recently, campaigning, our party institution, our structures. We have a lot of great professionals that work for our party, but we also have local elections coming up next year. County council elections will be pivotal to the rebuild of our party nationally, but also at the grassroots. We'll be finding candidates to come and stand for us, represent us, wear the famous blue rosette with a degree of pride.
Which you're proud of.
Which I am, because, you know, we want to have a whole new generation of people stand for our party that, with pride,
Yeah.
not only wear the rosette, but stand up for conservative values and beliefs. And I want to be part of the rebuild of our party.
And you set out your plans in the Conservative Home today, this website, elected chairs. You want to choose candidates early. You were selected in 2006 for
That's
Witham,
right,
and you
yes.
had 4 years to get ready. So rather than have these a dreadful situation of dropping in favoured aides to fight for key seats,
we
as we
have
saw.
to put a stop to all of that.
It
We
is.
really
It is.
do.
Takes the mickey, I think, out of the base.
But the principles are all about democracy.
Yeah.
So we stand on an elected platform, put ourselves to the public, and, we go through the democratic processes. We need to apply those processes to our own party. Currently, it's been looking like a closed shop. Associations. I've been a member of the party for over 34 years. And I have been to a few associations in my time, I can tell you. And there are so many stories where selection processes have worked really well. And then where you hear the horror stories where the associations are just ridden roughshod over, where they just don't have the chance to pick their own people. As a Tory party member, a grassroots activist, you don't really have much say anymore.
So will you change the constitution of the party then to allow an elected
We need to
chair
look at all... We need to do all sorts. We really do. And actually, I think this is exciting. When I joined the party, it was exciting to join the party. I started out in the Radlett branch in Hertfordshire, and Cecil Parkinson was my member of parliament. But it was exciting. Even joining a branch meeting was exciting because we had a say. Our voices were heard and listened to. Cecil, just to give you this example, he would always come and speak to the members, us, because he'd basically say, we've got this stuff coming up in Westminster in the next few weeks, and I want to hear your views. I'm not sure that happens anymore. I know for a fact it doesn't happen.
Parkinson, of course, Thatcher's favourite. I mean,
of course.
Thatcher's chairman. I mean, a real link there to the...
But then look at where we once were to where we are now. And I want that golden thread from the grassroots to be, knitted back to the top of the party. We've become an organisation that is far too top down. I believe we're an organisation that should be bottom up. And I've been consistent on this for well over a decade. I say I'm from the party for the party. The grassroots matters. We are nothing without the loyalty, the dedication of our members. And I will always speak with passion about this, because without them, we're not going to have the people that knock on doors, stuff the envelopes, campaign come rain or shine, in good times and the bad times. And I've been there throughout all those years in the difficult times.
It's an ageing party. I mean, can it survive this? The average age of a person switching, this is a voter, from Labour to Tory is now 63.
I saw that.
Up from 39 2019 and 47 in 2017. So I've been following this, this party, all parties, for 2 decades, and I'm watching that number go up, which is a worry.
It's a trend. It's a consistent trend for us now. And that should tell us everything that we need to know about some of the reforms and the change that we want to see in our party as well. As I said, when I joined the party, it was exciting. It was a home for younger members to come. We need to make it that place all over again. We've got a whole generation that doesn't even engage or look at our party. We've got to turn that around.
So policies is how you attract more people from the Labour. I mean, Labour are really, they're going for it, aren't they? I mean, the pay rise for the train drivers today, 15% over 3 years.
Look, I'll happily talk about what Labour are doing to our country. I really would. But, inflationary pay increases will not create the economic security that, hard-working households and families need.
They're getting a free pass, aren't they?
They're going to pay the price in inflation.
Do you think it will?
The other point to say is that look at what they're doing actually to our elderly population as well. The winter fuel allowance, it's the meanest policy coming from a party that are actually showing their true colours. And at the same time, the dishonesty. They didn't say they'll do this at the general election. The only thing that
they found a black hole.
They're rewriting economic and political history right now as well. You and I know. I'm sure you must have been on their battle bus during the campaign.
Oh yes.
So you would have also heard that whole narrative and the arguments from the IFS, the dishonesty with Labour and actually probably all political parties around fiscal choices and decisions that they would make. And it's easy for them now to sort of do the slopey shouldered thing and sort of say, well, we didn't really mean it and, it's a lot worse. Rewriting political history is lazy and it's easy to do rather than make the tough decisions. And now they're talking about tax increases. They did not say that during the general election.
Well, they defined, they said not in some key areas. They didn't say all across the wealth taxes weren't touched on.
But the reality is 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago, we heard Rachel Reeves basically talk about blanket tax increases. So the scrutiny is going to have to come, and, you know, we will be at the forefront of doing that.
Is the problem here that there's people don't understand the cost of all this government spending? That we've been socialised by the COVID response, 400 billion spent on us as a country, but there is a price to pay for that, and that's not understood.
So public expectations of what government does for individuals, I think, has shifted. The pandemic has clearly played a role in that, no question about that. During the pandemic, obviously, we gave great support to the public, furlough, all these schemes that actually preserve jobs and economic security. I can tell you, during the general election campaign, and I knocked on a lot of doors and I went to 18 constituencies, people had no love for Labour, and I can tell you something else. They did recognise the support that the government gave them during the pandemic, and they were grateful for that.
Well, they're grateful.
And I think just that recognition speaks to actually, you know, the values of a good government that stands by you during tough times, which we did. I do also think now we have to level with the public and be honest with the public about what the duty of the state is and what it is not. You know, clearly, as Conservatives, we believe in having solid economic foundations, sound money, stable finances, a sustainable balance sheet for our country. We don't believe in just putting on greater debt for future generations. We have to get back into making those arguments all over again and having those debates with the public. And I have to say, with a Labour government that is intent on ignoring the will of the public on things like planning and, you know, being actually not transparent and dishonest about what they said in the election and what they're doing now, we will hold them to account.
So you're a low tax, low immigration Tory. Taxes are at record high. We know maybe that's because of the COVID pandemic and also the energy shock.
A lot of it is.
And the energy shock in Ukraine, of course. You were Home Secretary when immigration hit record levels. Do you want to apologise for that?
Well, I think we have to look at context, first of all. So, and remember this, 2019 election campaign, I was absolutely crystal clear. We as a party stood on a platform, points-based system. Points-based system. And you know why that was? A lot of people didn't want to write about it or report on it at the time. Points-based system means the government of the day has levers to control immigration numbers. That is a fact.
And it chose not to.
You cannot say that. That is not accurate, if I may say so. Primarily because actually a Conservative government did choose to act on that, and it did in Rishi Sunak's government. My time as Home Secretary, I was bringing in the whole system reforms, and that was on legal migration, a points-based system. And we can come on to illegal, which is separate.
Yes.
The two should never be conflated.
No, I don't.
But on legal migration, let's not forget, in 2020 onwards, we've just spoken about the pandemic. We had the pandemic. So what did the government choose to do? And I think this is the right thing to do. We absolutely made sure we gave the NHS the support that it needed through health and social care visas. Are we going to say that was the wrong thing to do? I mean, knock on doors and ask your listeners, your viewers, would they say we should not have had more doctors and nurses? I think they would not say that.
That's what Labour say. I mean, I think...
Well, are they saying that? Are Labour really saying that? Because I think that's incredibly disingenuous and insincere. Think about the implications that would have had for NHS waiting lists and people accessing treatment. And then on top of that, I mean, people want to have this debate. I'm very happy to have the debate and discussion. Humanitarian crises, Russia, Ukraine, would we say no to the Ukrainian citizens that have made their homes here?
And no to the Hong Kongers. I mean,
National Security Act in Hong Kong.
British nationals in Hong Kong, of course.
The National Security Act in Hong Kong was a turning point for all of us. We have historic obligations to the people of Hong Kong.
Net migration has gone up 2 million over 4 years. And you don't want to say that was too much? I mean, many would say it is too much.
But you can put context to it. And I think it's too lazy, if I may say so. I think it's really quite sloppy just to go around, the merry-go-round on this, in the sense that students, we shut down. Don't forget, during the pandemic, our borders were effectively closed. There was no travel. What about all those international students? They came in after the pandemic. Are we saying that they should not have come into the country? So
they brought their families there, didn't they, on your watch?
So the system, no.
No?
You have to, again, which students brought their families? Look at the categories and the criteria. I do think, put the facts and the context around this. And one final point to make, points-based system, the brightest and the best I was the one that put a skills criteria to it. You don't come to our country through the points-based system unless you're sponsored, unless you're paying thousands of pounds for your visa, the immigration health surcharge, and you're sponsored. These are people that come here and work and contribute to our country and our tax base. So
we talk about immigration because it's such a key touchstone with so many viewers, listeners of GB News, and that's why reform their one in, one out policy, which you can discuss that if you want to. But
so let me just stop you there. Do your viewers know the context as to why people are coming here?
They see the overall number. They understand about Hong Kong. They understand about Ukraine.
That's great, and so they should. Do they understand that to come to our country to work, you actually have to be sponsored, you pay for your visas, and you actually, a lot of these people are also high rate taxpayers. So that context matters. The other point to make as well, though, the points-based system gives the government of the day the levers.
Yes.
The points-based system came in. It was inevitable with the pandemic that it would take time to stabilise and balance. That has happened. That has happened. We are seeing figures go down. Those figures I can tell you because it's cyclical as well. They'll go even further down. That's an inevitability.
250,000 or so.
It's an inevitability they will go down. But then we also have to ask ourselves, again, if you don't want so many people coming to work in our country, then there's a wider discussion to be had there. I'm very pro having I'm very pro having a labour market strategy. So, I put that challenge to the government, put a labour market strategy together, reform the apprentice levy to ensure that British youngsters are being skilled and trained to work across these sectors where the demand is. We'll also challenge Labour. What are they going to do on people that actually are, right now, accessing in-work benefits and, need to do much more with the welfare system? It is the same Labour Party that also did not support many of the welfare reforms that we put in place. So these are new challenges, but I think, again, we have to be honest with the public about what our economy and our country needs. I've spent years when I was in government as well, all colleagues lobbying for more seasonal agricultural workers.
Treasury, of course.
More lorry drivers. Lorry drivers, actually, DWP did some really good work on to actually put more training schemes in place. But again, it speaks to our economic needs and how we actually going to grow the talent that people automatically said we have domestically here.
Net migration under 100,000 a year, is that where you want to be if you're Prime Minister?
Well, I think, look, we've just had a good discussion, a long discussion about context. We now have the levers of control. We have to apply those levers.
That's what Brexit gave you that control.
So Brexit freedoms gave us that control. And I think for your viewers and listeners in particular, a points-based system was only possible because of Brexit.
And would you go to tens of thousands a year?
We have the levers of control. So providing we can get everything, we can balance the whole thing in terms of what our country needs and the skills. We have the skills and obviously we can do that.
Okay. Brexit, no one doubts you on Brexit. You were obviously a Spartan. You held out of the 3 votes against Theresa May. Where would you go from there? ECHR? Just for the record, you want to pull out the European Convention of Human Rights? Finish the job?
Just on Brexit. Brexit has given us, as I've said, points-based system. Yeah. It's given us new trading relations in the world. There is clearly more to do there. And that is something that, I think is a great thing for our country. And the world is changing, much more open. So we can absolutely do that. You've asked me about ECHR. I don't think that is linked to Brexit at all, to be honest.
It's a sovereignty issue. That's why I say Brexit. Actually, it's about sovereignty in courts. And that's why it's a Brexit issue.
But so is the Human Rights Act. And in terms of how our courts interpret our own domestic laws and legislation. So I'm all for, this would probably be the first time you hear me speak about reform in a positive way. I would go for the reform option.
Reform UK option?
No, reform of what we do domestically to our laws to take control in the way in which we have not taken control. And I say this in a very serious context. The country has just rejected my party electorally at the ballot box. The country will not take too kindly to a Conservative parliamentary party, literally having these insular arguments and just, talking amongst ourselves when we've got a country to be standing up for. And I think we have to find the right solutions to our domestic laws. And there are plenty of examples. If you look at, for example, even on illegal migration, we haven't even touched on illegal migration right now, but the reforms that I put in place are on the statute book, in legislation, it's an act of parliament, the one-stop shop, how you stop illegal migrants going to our courts all over again, not once, not twice, but several times, to thwart their appeals on removal. We have the ability to have a one-stop shop. The Immigration Courts and Tribunals reform, we have not put that in place. I also worked with our legal officers and our legal structures and systems to get that on the statute books. That would also mean you could do fast-tracked removals, detain people and remove them, and that's basically where we need to be.
Rwanda was your idea, wasn't it? Would you bring it back if you became leader?
So I'm going to pay tribute actually to the government of Rwanda, who, all credit to them. I've spoke about this in the past. You may have interviewed me in the past on this as well. They wanted to be part of an international solution to stop people trafficking and this evil smuggling trade that we see. They set very high standards when it comes to refugees and resettlement. They were a natural partner for us, and I think we should pay tribute to them. I think they've been treated appallingly by this Labour government. I really do. They're just being treated quite disgracefully by, literally tearing up that agreement.
But the scheme itself.
So, do you know what I think is going to happen? I reckon there'll be another country that will follow in the footsteps that we were leading the way on this.
Outsourcing.
That will effectively do third country removal and resettlement, because as we know, across Europe, and Europe is in a very politically unstable and unhappy place on this, other European countries are actually going against the European Commission, where they've always said they'll stick as one block and one voice. Other countries are doing their own thing. Famously, Italy. The Danes were looking at this while I was Home Secretary. The Germans were looking at this while I was Home Secretary. And the Greek government, as you will know, because I spent a lot of time with our counterparts in Greece, we were looking at the reception detention centre model that they had, that we had as government policy. It was called the New Plan for Immigration.
Yes.
And the Greeks managed to actually have the right deterrence in place, where they were able to stop the boats themselves.
They're processing but not deporting. They're processing schemes, aren't they, in Albania and the like? That's not the same as Rwanda, which is deporting.
But European countries are looking into this. And as I said, when I was Home Secretary, the Danes, I was speaking to the Danes, the Germans were also looking at this. And you do need to have a deterrent.
Yeah.
We are a small country, and we have a Labour government that has made a big political statement and choice. They have torn up all the reforms that we put in place and the Rwanda policy, and there is no deterrent. And this is a sobering thought now. That is now licensed to print money for the evil people smuggling gangs. And this will put more lives at risk and in peril. And I wanted to stop that. And to be quite frank, the Conservative government wanted to stop that. Rishi Sunak wanted to stop that.
Yep.
So, we will have to look at all of this going forward.
Immigration was part of the troubles we've seen in England so far, and now they're over, thank goodness, in the dozen or so towns and cities. What was your response to those riots? Mel Stride, standing to be leader, talks about white boys being forgotten by the government. Is it that?
I think, look, there's a lot to say here, actually. First of all, there's no excuse for the type of violence and criminality that we've seen. Zero excuse.
Everyone agrees on that.
So, but it's serious, right? So we've seen the criminal justice system kick in and all this kind of stuff. I would have liked us to have held the government to account on policing in particular. Obviously, I've been there myself, being held to account on policing and, what goes on during difficult times, during the pandemic, all this kind of stuff. But if we look at some of the root causes, point number one, you cannot take to the streets when you've got a grievance. We've just had a general election. The British people, respect process and our institutions. They voted at the ballot box to have their voices heard. I do think, and in fact, I've got great colleagues. I tell you, Ian Duncan-Smith has been very good on this before. He set up the Centre for Social Justice to look at left behind communities, social deprivation, generational social deprivation, particularly amongst white, young, working class boys. I also think levelling up was at the heart of a lot of the work that we were trying to do in government. All of that has now been torn up. That is how you rebuild, literally from the bottom up, the grassroots in communities, to bring hope, to help to create jobs, aspiration, better lives, even facilities for young people. That's really where we should be at. And, again, these are, for us and for me in particular, I've been in a government where, that was all part of our matrix, our agenda, the policy areas where we wanted to grow and bring this forward through levelling up. And I think this is really where all governments, I don't want to be party political here, all governments should really be concentrating.
Is concern about immigration a far-right issue or an issue shared by lots
It's
of
across the
votes.
public. It is across the public. Wherever you go, and I come back to my tour during the general
Yeah.
election, wherever I
18
went,
seats you went
and
to.
I travelled extensively. I saw a lot of my great colleagues, and wherever when you knocked on doors, but it was mainly illegal immigration. Again, have the distinction. People have massive concerns, and rightly so, about illegal migrants coming to our country, being trafficked, being smuggled, and what that means for our communities. And if I can give you just one example, because it's actually on my doorstep in my district. As you know, I'm a member of parliament in several districts. One of them is Braintree district. We had the RAF base Wethersfield, which became home to asylum seekers. Lots of disquiet. We had asylum seekers being dispersed across our local communities and dispersal across lots of communities. That is why the public are very, they have views on this, which comes back to we need the right kind of policies to stop this from happening in the first place. You need deterrence, and we need the right kind of accommodation. And we had the new plan for immigration was to have reception centres, so we would not have dispersal in the community in the way in which we've seen.
So it's illegal migration is the issue, rather than concerns about
I have
legal,
not had people complain to me about doctors and nurses coming to our country.
No.
I visited a GP practice I think it was just on Tuesday, in one of my really lovely villages, and we've got nurses and doctors there who originate from different parts of the world. They are the front line. These are people on our front line. They are proud to be keeping our public services, going, running, and they're very proud to serve in local communities such as my own.
Explain your relationship with Nigel Farage, if I can ask. He's been a friend of yours for years. You said last month you were dancing with him at the GB News karaoke party, I believe that thought there, but back in October last year. You don't think he should have any role in the party if you're leader?
I think Nigel's ruled himself out already. Did you not interview him and ask him that question?
Because I think he symbolises a kind of worldview on politics. That's why he's a shortcut to thinking about that kind of where he sits with his Reform UK policies. Is that a mistake? I mean, don't you think of the 4 million who voted Reform UK last month's election, a lot of those are Tories who may want to come back. And if you want to, why not say, yeah, I'll work with anyone who has my values?
Well, I think first of all, Reform is not the Conservative Party.
No?
It's a political party that stood against the Conservative Party in the general election.
It's a company, not even a party, but we'll leave that to one side.
That's for others, not for me. On top of that, we lost a lot of colleagues, good public servants. So I think it's just not right. It isn't right. And, he's a leader of a political party. So, they'll do what they do. And we're in the process now of electing a new leader for our party, rebuilding our party. And if I may say so, my complete mantra for the future of our party is going back to being, the authentic Conservative party that we've always have been. I think that got lost in translation.
Yep.
You've mentioned the 4 million people that voted for reform, and rightly so. It's important to recognise that. A lot of them were disillusioned. A lot of them saw that we failed to deliver. We saw a lot of tactical voting in this general election. These are big messages and lessons to my party, and we've got to learn from that. I'll never be dismissive about what happened in the last general election, but my focus as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party is to make sure we go back to being a strong Conservative and Unionist Party once again.
And welcoming back some of the millions who voted
You do
Reform.
that through earning back their trust.
You earn it back.
You earn it back. And that is really important.
Yeah.
People have left us for a raft of reasons, for our own conduct, for failure to deliver. We need to earn the right to be respected, heard, listened to, and win their trust back. And that, for me, is absolutely my mission.
How about other colleagues of his? Lee Anderson, Rupert Lowe, others too. There are 5 or so.
They seem quite happy where they are.
Yeah, they might come.
I've seen them in Parliament. They're carrying on doing what they're doing.
Just gaming. A defection would look as though the party is trying to...
I think, look, Chopper, my focus is on rebuilding the Conservative Party right now. And that is absolutely, I'm a committed Conservative. I want my party to go back to being the most successful political party in the Western world. I want us to be out there winning elections all over again, appealing to the next generation. And importantly, winning back the trust and confidence of the British public, because they've left us.
And role for Boris Johnson, your old mate, you're one of his close.
Well, he is a committed Conservative and a
Yeah.
lifelong Conservative. I think that's a matter for him.
Could he be an MP again?
That's all for him. That really is.
You mentioned your background in Radlett. You were brought up in a post office, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you know your community. How does that affect your politics?
I think it's defined a lot of my upbringing has defined me. There's no doubt about that. Sort of hard work, 7 days a week, all that kind of stuff. I am very much rooted in the communities that I've grown up knowing. I used to get on my bike, which was a chopper when I was growing up, actually, to do little grocery rounds to, elderly, not now, some of the elderly residents in the villages that we lived in. My dad was a sub-postmaster, he owned newsagents, he used to do the cash and carry run after school, all that kind of stuff. And you learn so much about life and work, the world of work, how to run a business. But I think importantly, you learn so much about people and people's lives. And my party needs to be in that space all over again, where we stop looking as if we're detached. We understand the challenges that people face in their lives, how people live their lives, the balances of trying to juggle a family, go to work, pay your bills, all those types of things. I used to see that in my dad's post office. In the post office, people used to come and pay their bills. You can still go and pay your bills in the post office.
Yes.
So you get a feel for, what goes on.
And you always voted Tory? I mean, do you ever flirt with the referendum party?
I've voted Conservative in every election.
All the iterations of the right? No, always the Tories. If you couldn't vote Tory, how would you vote? Just you and me talking? No one's listening?
I'm a lifelong Conservative. I'm loyal. I'm dedicated to my party.
No options there. Okay. We've got some quick yes-no questions we're asking all the candidates, and there's some do repeat from earlier. Should net migration be under 100,000 a year?
So we're going to take control. We have the levers.
So yes.
We have the levers to have that control.
Would you means test a state pension?
Would I?
Means test the state pension? No. Would you scrap the licence fee?
Yes.
What? Replace it with what?
Well, we need the BBC needs reform.
Okay.
You want that discussion now?
No, that's not. But you do some work on it.
We need to reform that whole thing.
The winter fuel payment, you'd restore that. You'd find the money for that.
Of course.
For the pensioners, and you'd protect the triple lock. I mean, there's always already on the threat. Maybe in the future budget.
The right thing for our pensioners.
Dame Priti Patel, thank you for joining us today on Chopper's Political Podcast. We've done our best to try to capture why you're standing and why you might win, see if you can get through to the final four, then the final two over the next few months. Thank you for listening this week to Chopper's Political Podcast. I tweet at Christopher Hope on X, email me chopper@gbnews.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do tell your friends. If you've really enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to help other people find it. Thank you to the brilliant team of GB News colleagues behind this podcast, Mick Booker, Jeff Marsh, Rebecca Nunes, George McMillan and Keith Bays. And most importantly of all, thank you to you for listening. If you want more Chopper in your life, and I know Priti Patel certainly does, do catch me during the week on GB News, reporting on politics, and at midday on Wednesdays when Parliament sits for PMQs Live. And please do keep up to date with all our best political reporting on our website, gbnews.com. Until next time though, cheerio!